Introduction. The air in the conference room smelled like stale coffee and expensive perfume. It was a cold, sharp smell that seemed to stick to the back of the throat. Above, the fluorescent lights hummed with a low, steady buzz that felt like a tiny needle pressing against the forehead. Maya sat in her chair, her hands folded neatly on top of her leather notebook. She had spent 3 weeks staying late to finish the Project Phoenix data. Her eyes were dry from staring at blue-lit screens until midnight. Her back ached from the stiff office chair that never quite fit her frame. She had done the work, found the errors, and mapped out the path to save the company millions. Across the table, Steve leaned back. He hadn't stayed late. He hadn't checked the data twice. But as the CEO looked around the room, Steve cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about the Phoenix data," Steve said, his voice loud and smooth. He didn't look at Maya. "I think the best way forward is to pivot our focus to the regional markets first. It's a bold move, but it's the only way to see real growth." The CEO nodded, scribbling a note. "Great insight, Steve. That's the kind of leadership we need." Maya felt a sudden heat rise from her chest. It climbed up her neck, hot and prickly. That was her idea. She had written it on page 12 of the report she had emailed Steve for feedback yesterday. Her heart started to drum against her ribs, thump, 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 like a trapped bird trying to get out. She opened her mouth to speak. She wanted to say, "Actually, I proposed that in my draft." She wanted to stand up and show her notes. But instead, she felt a familiar weight on her shoulders. It was the weight of 20 years of being told to be the bigger person. It was the voice of her mother telling her that nice girls don't make a scene. So Maya did what she always did. She swallowed the heat. She forced a small, polite smile. She watched as Steve took the credit for her long nights and her bright ideas. By the time the meeting ended, Maya felt gray. Not just tired, but a deep, dusty gray that seemed to cover her skin and her soul. She felt like she was fading into the beige walls of the office. The quiet hunger for more. You know that gray feeling. You might be feeling it right now as you hold this book. It is the exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. It is the feeling of being a good girl who followed all the rules, only to find out the rules were never designed to help you win. Society has a very specific box for women. Inside that box, it is bright and sunny. You are expected to be the light feminine. This means you are supposed to be nurturing, always taking care of everyone else's feelings before your own. Kind, never raising your voice even when someone steps on your toes. Receptive, waiting for others to notice your hard work instead of claiming it. Pleasant, keeping a smile on your face so no one thinks you are difficult or angry. There is nothing wrong with being kind or nurturing. These are beautiful traits. But when you are only allowed to be those things, you become half a person. You become a hollow shell. You spend all your energy making sure everyone else is comfortable, while you are slowly starving for a life that actually belongs to you. The problem is that we have been taught to fear the other half of ourselves. We have been told that the dark feminine is something bad, something dangerous, or even something evil. We are told that a woman who is loud is crazy. A woman who is firm is a bitch. A woman who knows what she wants and goes after it is selfish. So we push those dark parts of ourselves down into a basement deep inside our minds. We lock the door and pretend they aren't there. But those parts don't just disappear. They sit in the dark, turning into resentment, burnout, and physical pain. They turn into the soul graying that Maya feels every single day. The power in the shadows. The truth is that the dark feminine is not about being bad. It is about being whole. Think of the ocean. The surface of the ocean can be sunny and blue. It is where people swim and play. This is like the light feminine. But the ocean is also deep. Far below the surface, it is dark, cold, and incredibly powerful. That deep water is where the real life is. It is where the giant whales swim and where the tides are born. Without the deep, dark water, the ocean would just be a shallow puddle. The dark feminine is that deep water inside you. It is the part of you that knows your worth without needing a boss or a partner to tell you, sets iron boundaries that keep people from taking advantage of your kindness, feels sacred anger when things are unfair, and uses that anger to change the world, creates magic and art from the messy, raw parts of life. When you unchain this energy, you don't become a bad person. You become a sovereign person. A sovereign is someone who owns themselves. You no longer wait for someone to give you permission to speak. You no longer hope someone will notice you. You walk into a room, and people can feel your presence before you even say a word. This book is your roadmap out of the gray. It is an invitation to walk into the basement, unlock the door, and invite your dark self out to tea. You are going to learn that your anger is actually a compass pointing toward your power. You are going to learn that your no is just as holy as your yes. A long history of hiding. We didn't start hiding our power by accident. For hundreds of years, the world has worked very hard to keep women in the light. There was a time when women were the healers, the wise ones, and the leaders of their communities. But as history moved forward, those women became a threat. If a woman could heal herself, she didn't need to buy medicine. If a woman could lead, she didn't need to be ruled. To stop this power, people created stories. They said that women who knew too much were witches. They wrote books about how to hunt these women down and silence them. They told us that our intuition was hysteria and our passion was sin. Even today, this continues in smaller ways. It's called tone policing. It happens when you are making a valid point, but someone tells you to calm down so they don't have to listen to the truth of what you are saying. It happens when you are called bossy for doing the exact same thing a man is called a leader for doing. This book is rooted in something much older and deeper than the rules of a modern office or a good girl upbringing. It is rooted in history, psychology, and ancient myths that have survived for thousands of years. You will see evidence of this power in the lives of women like Hildegard of Bingen, a woman from the 1100s who had visions so intense they made her sick. Instead of hiding, she used that dark intensity to write music and books that changed the world. You will see it in the myth of Artemis, the huntress who lived in the wild and never asked anyone for permission to be there. You will see it in Lilith, the woman who chose the wilderness over a garden where she wasn't treated as an equal. These are not just old stories. They are blueprints. They are proof that the energy you feel bubbling inside you, the part that wants to scream when Steve steals your idea, is actually a very old, very sacred power. Meeting Maya. Throughout this journey, we are going to follow Maya. Maya is 34 years old. She is smart, she is fast, and she is the person everyone turns to when a project is falling apart. She is the office mom. She brings cupcakes on birthdays. She listens to her coworkers complain about their divorces for hours. She does all the emotional labor that no one puts on a resume, but everyone expects a woman to do. But Maya is drowning. She lives in a nice apartment, but she's too tired to enjoy it. She has a partner who loves her, but she feels like she has to perform happiness for him even when she's exhausted. She feels like her life is a movie she is watching rather than a life she is living. When Steve stole her idea in that meeting, something shifted. It wasn't a big explosion. It was just a small, cold realization. If I keep being nice, I am going to disappear. Maya's story is the story of so many of us. She is the woman who is tired of being good and is finally ready to be real. Over the next several chapters, we are going to watch Maya learn how to look into the obsidian mirror, a tool for seeing her true dark self without fear. We will watch her build thorns to protect her rose. We will watch her turn her cauldron of chaos into a source of creative brilliance. By the time we reach the end of this book, Maya won't just be a better manager. She will be a woman who knows who she is. And you will be too. The roadmap to sovereignty. The path ahead of us is divided into 3 main parts. First, we will focus on the internal shift. We have to understand why we are afraid of our own shadows. We will look at how society trained us to be small, and how to reclaim the discarded pieces of our souls. We will dive into shadow work, which is the process of taking the things you were told were ugly, like your ambition or your rage, and seeing them as the fuel they actually are. Second, we will focus on the external shield. Once you feel your power, you have to protect it. We will talk about iron boundaries. You will learn how to say no without giving a million excuses. You will learn the 7 gates of boundaries that protect your time, your body, and your spirit. We will explore how to handle the fear of people being mad at you. Spoiler, they might be mad and that's okay. Third, we will focus on the sovereign manifestation. This is where the magic happens. We will look at how to take all that intense, dark energy and funnel it into your work, your art, and your presence. We will study the physics of presence and learn how to be magnetic. You will see how to claim your place in the world without asking for a seat at the table, because you will be the one building the room. We are going to use several thematic threads to help us along the way. The obsidian mirror, a tool for looking at your shadow and seeing the beauty in it. The thorns and the rose, a way to understand that your sharp parts are what allow your soft parts to survive. The cauldron of chaos, a way to take your messy emotions and cook them into something powerful and new. The invitation. You might feel a little bit nervous right now. That is normal. Your good girl conditioning is very loud, and it is probably whispering that this book is too much, or that you shouldn't rock the boat. But listen to your body. Is your heart beating a little faster? Do you feel a tiny spark of excitement in your stomach? That is the dark feminine waking up. She has been waiting for you to notice her. She isn't here to hurt you. She is here to save you. She is the part of you that knows you were meant for more than just getting by and being helpful. You do not need to be fixed. You are not broken. You are just fragmented. You have been living with only half of your power, trying to fly with one wing tucked behind your back. It is time to unfold that other wing. It might be dark, and it might be a little bit scary to look at, but it is the only way you will ever truly soar. The world does not need more nice women who are secretly miserable. The world needs sovereign women who are vibrantly alive. Maya is standing at the door of that conference room, looking back at the life she used to lead. She is about to take the first step toward the obsidian mirror. Let's begin. Chapter 1: Why do we fear the woman in the shadows? In the late 1400s, Europe was a place of massive change. The printing press had just been invented, and for the first time in history, ideas could travel faster than a horse. New lands were being discovered, and the old ways of thinking were starting to crack. But while the world was opening up, a small dark room in Germany held 2 men who wanted to close it. Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger were members of the clergy, and they were angry. Kramer had recently tried to put a group of women on trial for being witches, but the local bishop had laughed at him and set the women free. Kramer didn't take the insult lightly. He sat down with his pen and began to write a book that would change the world for the next 300 years. That book was called the Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches. It wasn't just a religious book, it was a manual for fear. It argued that women were naturally weaker, more curious, and more likely to give in to dark impulses than men. It claimed that if a woman was too independent, knew too much about medicine, or lived alone in the woods, she was a threat to the soul of society. This book became a bestseller. It was carried by judges and priests across the continent. Because of those pages, thousands of women were hunted, not because they had done something wrong, but because they possessed a power that men couldn't name or control. This was the birth of the woman in the shadows, the idea that a woman's deep, untamed strength was something to be feared, silenced, and burned. The modern ghost of the hammer. We like to think we are far away from the 15th century. We don't hunt people with torches anymore. But the spirit of that old book still lives in our offices, our living rooms, and our own minds. Today, we don't call it a witch hunt, we call it tone policing. We tell women to be nicer if they want to be heard. We tell them their anger is unprofessional, or that their ambition is aggressive. We have been trained for centuries to stay in the light, to be the nurturer, the helper, and the one who smiles even when her heart is breaking. Maya knows this pressure well. She is 34 years old and works as a manager at a large tech company. On the outside, Maya is the perfect employee. She stays late to help her team. She remembers everyone's birthday. She's the good girl of the office. But inside, Maya feels like she is turning gray. Last Tuesday, Maya sat in a glass-walled meeting room. She had spent 3 weeks developing a new software strategy. When she finally spoke up to present it, her boss, a man named Marcus, cut her off halfway through. He took her notes, rephrased her ideas, and presented them to the board as if they were his own. The board cheered. Marcus smiled. Maya sat there, her heart hammering against her ribs, but she didn't say a word. She didn't want to make a scene. She didn't want to be that woman, the one who is difficult or loud. When she got home that night, she didn't feel sad. She felt nothing. It was as if her internal fire had been replaced by cold ash. This is what happens when we suppress the dark feminine energy for too long. We don't just lose our anger, we lose our color. We become ghosts in our own lives because we are terrified that if we show our true strength, the world will treat us the way Kramer treated those women in Germany. We fear the shadows because we've been told the shadows are where the monsters live. We haven't been told that the shadows are also where our power is hidden. The obsidian mirror. To reclaim what was lost, we have to look into a different kind of glass. In the ancient world, people didn't always use silver mirrors. They used obsidian mirrors. Obsidian is a black volcanic glass. It is formed when lava cools so quickly that it doesn't have time to grow crystals. It is sharp, dark, and deep. When you look into an obsidian mirror, you don't see the bright, polished version of yourself that you show to the world. You see the depths. You see the parts of yourself that are messy, raw, and powerful. The obsidian mirror is a mental model for seeing your dark feminine self. It requires you to look past the good girl mask and acknowledge 3 specific parts of your hidden nature. The denied desire. This is the part of you that wants things you were told you shouldn't want: power, money, solitude, or to be the center of attention. The sacred rage. This is the anger you've been told to swallow. It isn't a tantrum. It is a protective force that tells you when a boundary has been crossed. The primal autonomy. This is the part of you that belongs only to yourself. It doesn't belong to your boss, your partner, or your children. Maya's problem is that she has been looking into a light mirror her whole life. She only sees the version of herself that makes other people comfortable. When Marcus stole her idea, she looked in her light mirror and saw a team player. But if she had looked into the obsidian mirror, she would have seen a woman whose hard work was stolen and whose silence was a betrayal of her own soul. The obsidian mirror doesn't lie. It shows you that your niceness isn't a virtue, it's a cage. The huntress in the woods. If we want to understand how to live with this dark energy without being consumed by it, we have to look at Artemis. In Greek mythology, Artemis was the goddess of the hunt. She didn't live in the glittering palaces of Mount Olympus with the other gods. She lived in the wild, dark forests. She carried a silver bow and was surrounded by a pack of hounds. Artemis is the perfect symbol for the dark feminine because she is one in herself. She doesn't seek the approval of men. She doesn't ask for permission to hunt. She is focused, fierce, and deeply connected to her own nature. There is a famous story about a hunter named Actaeon who stumbled upon Artemis while she was bathing in a hidden pool. Instead of shrinking away or acting nice, Artemis turned him into a deer, and his own hounds chased him away. This story isn't about being cruel. It's about the sanctity of one's own space. Artemis represents the boundary. She shows us that there are parts of our lives, our ideas, our bodies, our time that are sacred. When someone violates that space, the dark feminine doesn't ask them to please stop. It acts. Maya has no Artemis in her life. She has no wild forest. Her life is all palace, all rules, all expectations, and all light. Because she has no connection to the huntress within her, she has no way to protect her pool. She allows people like Marcus to walk right in and take whatever they want. She thinks that by being nice, she is being a good person. But Artemis reminds us that a person with no boundaries isn't good, they are just unprotected. The two faces of the feminine. To move forward, we must understand that dark does not mean evil. In nature, we need the day, but we also need the night. Seeds cannot grow in constant sunlight, they need the dark, cool earth to crack open and take root. Our psyche is the same way. We have two sides to our feminine power. The light feminine. This is the energy of creation, nurturing, and connection. It is the sun that warms the garden. It is the yes. It is how we care for others and build communities. The dark feminine. This is the energy of transformation, boundaries, and destruction. It is the storm that clears the old forest so new things can grow. It is the no. It is how we protect ourselves and claim our territory. Society has spent thousands of years telling us that the light feminine is the only good way to be a woman. We are praised for being soft, but shamed for being firm. We are praised for being quiet, but shamed for being loud. This creates a split in our souls. When we cut off the dark feminine, we become like a bird with only one wing. We might be able to hop around on the ground, but we will never fly. Maya is beginning to realize this split. After the meeting with Marcus, she went to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. She saw the light version of herself, neat hair, professional clothes, a forced smile. But for a split second, she felt a surge of heat in her chest. It was a flash of pure dark energy. It told her, this is not okay. You are being erased. That feeling terrified her. She immediately tried to push it down. She told herself she was being too sensitive or dramatic. This is the legacy of the Malleus Maleficarum. Even 500 years later, when a woman feels her power, her first instinct is often to hunt it down and kill it before anyone else sees it. Why the world fears your shadow. Why did Kramer and Sprenger hate independent women so much? Why does Maya's boss feel the need to talk over her? It comes down to one word: control. The light feminine is easy to control. It wants to please. It wants to keep the peace. It will sacrifice its own needs to make sure everyone else is happy. But the dark feminine cannot be controlled. You cannot tell the storm where to blow. You cannot tell the fire what to burn. When a woman claims her dark energy, she becomes sovereign. She stops asking, is this okay, and starts stating, this is how it is. This change is threatening to structures that rely on good girls to do the heavy lifting. In Maya's office, the system works because Maya does the work and Marcus takes the credit. If Maya claims her dark feminine energy, that system breaks. She will demand credit. She will say no to extra work that doesn't serve her. She will stop being a resource and start being a force. The fear of the woman in the shadows is actually the fear of a woman who knows her own worth. When you are in the shadows, you are seeing the truth that others want to keep hidden. You see the power dynamics. You see the unfairness. And most importantly, you see that you have the power to change it. Integrating the obsidian mirror. Integrating this energy doesn't mean you become a villain. It means you become whole. It means that when you say yes, you actually mean it, because you also have the power to say no. Maya's journey started with a small exercise. She didn't quit her job or scream at Marcus. Instead, she sat at her desk and did a shadow audit. She took a piece of paper and drew a line down the middle. On one side, she wrote all the things she did to be nice that week. On the other side, she wrote what she actually felt while doing them. The nice act, staying late to fix a coworker's mistake. The shadow reality, feeling used and resentful because that coworker was out at a bar while she worked. The nice act, smiling when Marcus took her idea. The shadow reality, wanting to stand up and say, actually Marcus, those were my findings from the 14th. By writing it down, Maya was looking into the obsidian mirror. She was acknowledging the dark feelings she usually tried to hide. And a strange thing happened. Once she acknowledged the feelings, they stopped feeling like a scary monster in the basement. They started feeling like information. Her resentment wasn't a bad emotion. It was a signal that her boundaries were being trampled. Her anger wasn't unprofessional. It was a fuel she could use to stand up for herself next time. The historical echo. In the 15th century, the Malleus Maleficarum was used to silence women who were too much. Today we use different tools, but the goal is the same. When a woman is called hysterical for having an opinion, that is an echo of the witch trials. When a woman is told she's not a culture fit because she doesn't do everyone else's emotional labor, that is an echo of the hunt. But there is a difference between now and then. In the 1400s, women had very little protection from the law or the church. Today, the hammer that tries to crush us is mostly internal. We have been trained to be our own witch hunters. We police our own thoughts. We shame our own desires. We hide our own shadows. The transition from a good girl to a sovereign woman begins when you realize that the shadows aren't something to be feared, they are your territory. The woman in the shadows isn't a witch or a demon. She is the part of you that refuses to be small. She is the part of you that knows how to hunt like Artemis and how to protect your sacred pool. Maya is still at her job. She still looks like the same woman. But something shifted in that meeting room. The next time Marcus tried to interrupt her, she didn't look down at her notes. She didn't stop talking. She raised her voice just one notch, not a scream but a firm, steady tone, and said, "I'm not finished yet, Marcus. I'll take questions when I'm done." The room went silent. Marcus blinked, surprised. He didn't fire her. He didn't call her a witch. He simply sat back and listened. Maya had used a tiny piece of her dark feminine energy, her no, and the world didn't end. In fact, for the first time in years, the grayness in her spirit began to lift. She had looked into the obsidian mirror, and she liked the woman staring back. This is the work of the dark feminine. It is the process of unchaining the parts of yourself you were told to hate. It is the realization that your darkness is not a flaw. It is the fertile ground where your true power grows. You no longer need to fear the woman in the shadows. You just need to become her. Chapter 2: Shadow Work, Reclaiming the Pieces of Your Discarded Soul. The air inside the small stone tower at Bollingen was always thick with the smell of wood smoke and old paper. There was no electricity and no running water. The man who built it, a psychiatrist named Carl Jung, liked it that way. He wanted a place where the noise of the modern world couldn't reach him. Outside, the cold waters of Lake Zurich lapped against the shore. Inside, the only light came from flickering candles and the low glow of a fireplace. The walls were lined with hand-carved symbols and words in Latin and Greek. This wasn't a place for a doctor to see patients. It was a laboratory for the human soul. In the early 1900s, Jung spent years in this quiet fortress. He wasn't looking at the stars or studying chemicals. He was looking inward, into the parts of himself that most people try to hide. He had spent his career listening to the secrets of others, but he realized he had a secret of his own. He felt like there was a second person living inside him, someone darker, stronger, and much more honest than the polite doctor the world saw. He began to call this hidden side the shadow. Jung's discovery didn't come from a moment of calm. It came from a period of deep pain and confusion. He had just broken off his friendship with his mentor, Sigmund Freud. He felt lost and alone. He started having strange dreams and visions that scared him. Instead of running away from the fear, he decided to walk straight into it. He began writing down everything he saw and felt in a large leather-bound volume that would later be known as the Red Book. He realized that the parts of himself he found scary or bad were actually full of life. They were like seeds buried in the dark soil, waiting for the right moment to grow. The birth of the hidden self. To understand why we have a shadow, we have to look back at how we were raised. When a little girl is born, she is a storm of energy. She screams when she is hungry, laughs when she is happy, and kicks when she is mad. She